Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome back to the live studios here in Radha Lane, which is becoming a real studio. Oh yeah, more and more people are coming to here, and it's good. More than good. It's great. All right. So here under the shade of the mercy of Sri Sri Nilamadhava and their great devotees here in Houston, ISKCON of Houston, we're reading the Srimad-Bhagavatam as usual. Welcome back to all of you from the cyberspace, wherever you are. And we've reached the 17th chapter of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, first canto. And before we launch into that, we're going to read Sanatana Goswami's beautiful glorification of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. This prayer, by the way, appears in the Sri Krishna Leela Stava, and it's a BBT publication, and it's available. And it's text 412 to 416 in that book. And it's the 107th out of 108th obeisance that Sanatana Goswami calculated he would make to the Vrindavan Leela pastimes of Krishna. And it goes like this. Sarva Shastrabdi Yusha, Sarva Vedaika Satpala, Sarva Siddhanta Ratnaja, Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truth, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana, Srimad Bhagavata Prabho, Kalidwan Duritaditya, Sri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master, Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya, Premavarshak Shadayate, Sarvada Sarvasevyaya, Sri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin, Madguro Man Mahadana, Mandistaraga Madbhagya, Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu saduta dayin, adini chochata kada, hanamuncha gadachin mam, premnarit kantayospuda. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, now we're right in the middle of a conversation between Dharmaraj and who represents the personification of religion, and the Surbi cow, who represents the Mother Earth. And she is responding to, wait a second, I think this is Dharma. Yes, I'm sorry. This is Dharma, the personified religion, responding to Maharaj Parikshit, who was asking him questions about who did this to him. And the personality Kali is standing right over there, and he did it. So take notes. This is a very important section of the Bhagavatam. All right. Canto 1, Srimad-Bhagavatam, chapter 17, beginning with text 19. Some of the philosophers who deny all sorts of duality declare that one's own self is responsible for his personal happiness and distress. Others say that superhuman powers are responsible, while yet others say that activity is responsible. And the gross materialists maintain that nature is the ultimate cause. Purport. As referred to above, philosophers like Jaimini and his followers establish that fruitive activity is the root cause of all distress and happiness, and that even if there is a superior authority, some superhuman powerful god or gods, he or they are also under the influence of fruitive activity, because they reward result according to one's action. They say that action is not independent because action is performed by some performer. Therefore, the performer himself is the cause of his own happiness or distress. In the Bhagavad Gita 6.5, also it is confirmed that by one's mind, freed from material affection, one can deliver himself from the sufferings of material pangs. So one should not entangle oneself in matter by the mind's material affections. Thus one's own mind is one's friend or enemy in one's material happiness and distress. Atheistic, materialistic Sankyayites conclude that material nature is the cause of all causes. According to them, combinations of material elements are the causes of material happiness and distress, and disintegration of matter is the cause of freedom from all material pangs. Gautama and Kanada find that atomic combination is the cause of everything, and impersonalists like Ashtavakra discover that the spiritual effulgence of Brahman is the cause of all causes. But in the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord himself declares that he is the source of impersonal Brahman, and therefore he, the personality of Godhead, is the ultimate cause of all causes. It is also confirmed in the Brahma Samhita that Lord Krishna is the ultimate cause of all causes. So there you have a spectrum of what different philosophers think is the ultimate cause or reason for the happiness and distress in this world. Text 20. There are also some thinkers who believe that no one can ascertain the cause of distress by argumentation, nor know it by imagination, nor express it by words. O sage amongst kings, judge for yourself by thinking over all this with your own intelligence. Purport. The Vaishnavites, the devotees of the Lord, do believe, as above explained, that nothing can take place without the sanction of the Supreme Lord. He is the Supreme Director, for he confirms in the Bhagavad Gita 15:15 that he, as the all-pervading Paramatma, stays in everyone's heart and keeps vigilance over all actions and witnesses all activities. The argument of the atheist is that one cannot be punished for one's misdeeds unless proved before a qualified justice is refuted herein, for we accept the perpetual witness and constant companion of the living being. A living being may forget all that he might have done in his past or present life, but one must know that in the same tree of the material body, the individual soul and the supersoul, as Paramatma, are sitting like two birds. One of them, the living being, is enjoying the fruits of the tree, whereas the Supreme Being is there to witness the activities. Therefore, the Paramatma feature, the Supreme Soul, is actually the witness of all activities of the living being. And only by his direction can the living being remember or forget what he might have done in the past. He is therefore both the all-pervading impersonal Brahman and the localized Paramatma in everyone's heart. He is the knower of all past, present, and future, and nothing can be concealed from him. The devotees know this truth, and therefore they discharge their duties sincerely without being overly anxious for rewards. Besides that, one cannot estimate the Lord's reactions either by speculation or by scholarship. Why does he put some into difficulty and not others? He is the supreme knower of the Vedic knowledge, and thus he is the factual Vedantist. At the same time, he is the compiler of the Vedanta. No one is independent of him, and everyone is engaged in his service in different ways. In the conditioned state, such services are rendered by the living being under force of material nature, whereas in the liberated state, the living being is helped by the spiritual nature in the voluntary, loving service of the Lord. There is no incongruity or inebriety in his actions. All are on the path of absolute truth. Bhishma Deva correctly estimated the inconceivable actions of the Lord. The conclusion is, therefore, that the sufferings of the representative of religion and the representative of the earth, as presented before Maharaj Parikshit, were planned to prove that Maharaj Parikshit was the ideal executive head because he knew well how to give protection to the cows, the earth, and the brahmanas, religious principles, the two pillars of spiritual advancement. Everyone is under the control of the Lord. He is quite correct in his action, and when he desires something to be done by someone, irrespective of the consideration of the particular case. Maharaj Parikshit was thus put to test for his greatness. Now let us see how he solves it by his sagacious mind. So the personality of religion is telling him, you're the king, you're the representative of God, you can tell us. Sutta. Sutta Goswami said, thank you very much, Hare Krishna. Sutta Goswami said, O best among the Brahmanas, the emperor Parikshit, thus hearing the personality of religion speak, was fully satisfied, and without mistake or regret, he gave his reply. Purport. The statement of the bull and the personality of religion was full of philosophy and knowledge, and the king was satisfied, since he could understand that the suffering bull was not an ordinary one. Unless one is perfectly conversant with the law of the Supreme Lord, one cannot speak such things touching philosophical truths. The emperor, being also on an equal level of sagacity, replied to the point without doubts or mistakes. Text 22. The king said, O you who are in the form of a bull, you know the truth of religion, and you are speaking accordingly to the principle that the destination intended for the perpetrator of irreligious acts is also intended for one who identifies the perpetrator. You are no other than the personality of religion. Purport. A devotee's conclusion is that no one is directly responsible for being a benefactor or mischief monger without the sanction of the Lord. Therefore, he does not consider anyone to be directly responsible for such action. But in both the cases, he takes it for granted that either benefit or loss is God sent, and thus it is his grace. In case of benefit, no one will deny that it is God sent. But in the case of loss or reverses, one becomes doubtful about how the Lord could be so unkind to his devotee as to put him in great difficulty. Jesus Christ was seemingly put into such great difficulty, being crucified by the ignorant, but he was never angry at the mischief mongers. That is the way of accepting a thing, either favorably or unfavorable, or either favorable or unfavorable. Thus, for a devotee, the identifier is equally a sinner, like the mischief monger. By God's grace, the devotee tolerates all reverses. Maharaj Parikshit observed this, and therefore he could understand that the bull was no other than the personality of religion himself. In other words, a devotee has no suffering at all, because so-called suffering is also God's grace for a devotee who sees God in everything. The cow and bull never placed any complaint before the king for being tortured by the personality of Kali, although everyone lodges such complaints before the state authorities. The extraordinary behavior of the bull made the king conclude that the bull was certainly the personality of religion, for no one else could understand the finer intricacies of the codes of religion. Text 23. Thus it is concluded that the Lord's energies are inconceivable. No one can estimate them by mental speculation or by word jugglery. Purport. A question may be raised as to why a devotee should refrain from identifying an actor, although he knows definitely that the Lord is the ultimate doer of everything. Knowing the ultimate doer, one should not pose himself as ignorant of the actual performer. To answer this doubt, the reply is that the Lord is also not directly responsible, for everything is done by his deputed Maya Shakti, or material energy. The material energy is always provoking doubts about the supreme authority of the Lord. The personality of religion knew perfectly well that nothing can take place without the sanction of the Supreme Lord, and still he was put into doubts by the deluding energy, and thus he refrained from mentioning the supreme cause. This doubtfulness was due to the contamination of both Kali and the material energy. The whole atmosphere of the age of Kali is magnified by the deluding energy, and the proportion of measurement is inexplicable. Text 24. In the age of Satya, truthfulness, your 4 legs were established by the 4 principles of austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness. But it appears that 3 of your legs are broken due to rampant irreligion in the form of pride, lust for women, and intoxication. Purport. The deluding energy or material nature can act upon the living beings proportionately in terms of the living beings falling prey to the deluding attraction of Maya. Moths are captivated by the glaring brightness of light, and thus they become prey to the fire. Similarly, this deluding energy is always captivating the conditioned souls to become prey to the fire of delusion, and the Vedic scriptures warn the conditioned souls not to become prey to delusion, but to get rid of it. The Vedas warn us to go not to the darkness of ignorance, but to the progressive path of light. The Lord himself also warns that the deluding power of material energy is too powerful to overcome. But one who completely surrenders unto the Lord can easily do so. To surrender under the lotus feet of the Lord is also not very easy. Such surrender is possible by persons of austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness. These four principles of advanced civilization were remarkable features in the age of Satya. In that age, every human being was practically a qualified brahmana of the highest order, and in the spiritual orders of life, they were all paramahamsas, or the topmost in the renounced order. By cultural standing, the human beings were not at all subjugated to the deluding energy. Not at all subjected, to the deluding energy. I'll read that again. By cultural standing, the human beings were not at all subjected to the deluding energy. Such strong men of character were competent enough to get away from the clutches of Maya. But gradually, as the basic principles of Brahminical culture, namely austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness, became curtailed by proportionate development of pride, attachment for women, and intoxication, the path of salvation or the path of transcendental bliss retreated far, far away from human society. With the progression of the age of Kali, people are becoming very proud and attached to women and intoxication. By the influence of the age of Kali, even a pauper is proud of his penny. The women are always dressed in an overly attractive fashion to victimize the minds of men, and the man is addicted to drinking wine, smoking, drinking tea, and chewing tobacco, and so on. All these habits, or so-called advancement of civilization, are the root causes of all irreligiosities, and therefore it is not possible to check corruption, bribery, and nepotism. Man cannot check all these evils simply by statutory acts and police vigilance, but he can cure the disease of the mind by the proper medicine, namely advocating the principles of Brahminical culture, or the principles of austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness. Modern civilization and economic development are creating a new situation of poverty and scarcity, with the result of blackmailing the consumer's commodities. Whoa. If the leaders and the rich men of the society spend 50% of their accumulated wealth mercifully for the misled mass of people and educate them in God consciousness, the knowledge of the Bhagavatam, certainly the age of Kali will be defeated in its attempt to entrap the conditioned souls. We must always remember that false pride or too high an estimation of one's own values of life, undue attachment for women or association with them, and intoxication will divert human civilization from the path of peace. However much the people clamor for peace in the world, the preaching of the Bhagavatam principles will automatically render all men austere, clean both inside and outside, merciful to the suffering, and truthful in daily behavior. That is the way of correcting the flaws of human society, which are very prominently exhibited at the present moment. Text 25. You are now standing on one leg only, which is your truthfulness, and you are somehow or other hobbling along. But quarrel personified, Kali, flourishing by deceit, is also trying to destroy that leg. Purport. The principles of religion do not stand on some dogmas or man-made formulas, but they stand on four primary regulative observances, namely austerities, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness. The mass of people must be taught to practice these principles from childhood. Austerity means to accept voluntary things which may not be very comfortable for the body, but are conducive for spiritual realization. For example, fasting. Fasting twice or 4 times a month is a sort of austerity which may be voluntarily accepted for spiritual realization only, and not for any other purposes, political or otherwise. Fastings which are meant not for self-realization, but for some other purposes, are condemned in the Bhagavad Gita. Similarly, cleanliness is necessary, both for the mind and for the body. Simply bodily cleanliness may help to some extent, but cleanliness of the mind is necessary, and it is effected by glorifying the Supreme Lord. No one can cleanse the accumulated mental dust without glorifying the Supreme Lord. A godless civilization cannot cleanse the mind because it has no idea of God. And for this simple reason, people under such a civilization cannot have good qualifications, however they may be materially equipped. We have to see things by the resultant action. The resultant action of human civilization in the age of Kali is dissatisfaction. So everyone is anxious to get peace of mind. This peace of mind was complete in the Satya age because of the existence of the above-mentioned attributes of the human beings. Gradually, these attributes have diminished in the Treta Yuga to 3/4, in the Dwapara to half, and in this age of Kali to 1/4, which is also gradually diminishing on account of prevailing untruthfulness. By pride, either artificial or real, the resultant action of austerity is spoiled. By too much affection for female association, cleanliness is spoiled. By too much addiction to intoxication, mercy is spoiled. And by too much lying propaganda, truthfulness is spoiled. The revival of Bhagavata Dharma can save human civilization from falling prey to evils of all description. 26. The burden of the earth was certainly diminished by the personality of Godhead and by others as well. When he was present as an incarnation, all good was performed because of his auspicious footprints. 27. Now she, the chaste one, being unfortunately forsaken by the personality of Godhead, laments her future with tears in her eyes, for she is now being ruled and enjoyed by lower class men who pose as rulers. Purport. The Kshatriya, or the man who is qualified to protect the sufferers, is meant to rule the state. Untrained lower class men, or men without ambition to protect the sufferers, cannot be placed on the seat of an administrator. Whoa. Shall I repeat that one? In opposition to what's happening in the news today? Untrained lower class men, or men without ambition to protect the sufferers, cannot be placed on the seat of an administrator. Unfortunately, in the age of Kali, the lower class men without training occupy the post of a ruler by strength of popular votes. Instead of protecting the sufferers, such men create a situation quite intolerable for everyone. Such rulers illegally gratify themselves at the cost of all comforts of the citizens. Whoa! And thus the chaste Mother Earth cries to see the pitiable condition of her sons, both men and animals. That is the future of the world in the age of Kali, when irreligiosity prevails most prominently. And in the absence of a suitable king to curb irreligious tendencies, educating the people systematically in the teachings of Srimad-Bhagavatam will clear up the hazy atmosphere of corruption, bribery, blackmail, and so on. My gosh. Maybe we should publish this and put it as a headline everywhere, on the internet, isn't it? I mean, this is very succinct. In few words, it says everything about why the corruption is there and who's the ones that are causing them. Amazing.
We need some chatrias.
Yeah. We need brahmanas and kshatriyas. Text 28. Maharaj Parikshit, who could fight 1,000 enemies single-handedly, thus pacified the personality of religion and the earth. Then he took up his sharp sword to kill the personality of Kali, who is the cause of all irreligion. Purport. As described above, the personality of Kali is he who deliberately commits all kinds of sinful acts which are forbidden in the revealed scriptures. This age of Kali will certainly be full of all activities of Kali, but this does not mean that the leaders of society, the executive heads, the learned and intelligent men, or above all, the devotees of the Lord, should sit down tightly and become callous to the reactions of the age of Kali. In the rainy season, certainly there will be profuse rainfalls, but that does not mean that men should not take means to protect themselves from the rain. It is the duty of the executive heads of state and others to take all necessary actions against the activities of Kali or the persons influenced by the age of Kali. And Maharaj Parikshit is the ideal executive head of state. For at once he was ready to kill the personality of Kali with his sharp sword. The administrators should not simply pass resolutions for anti-corruptional steps, but they must be ready with sharp swords to kill the persons creating corruptions from the angle of vision of the recognized Shastras. The administrators cannot prevent corrupt activities by allowing wine shops. They must at once close all shops of intoxicating drugs and wine and force punishment, even by death, upon those who indulge in habits of intoxication of all description. That is the way of stopping the activities of Kali, as exhibited herein by Maharaj Parikshit, the Maharata. 29. When the personality of Kali understood that the king was willing to kill him, he at once abandoned the dress of a king and, under pressure of fear, completely surrendered to him, bowing his head. Memo to Trump. If you don't want to get crucified, you better bow down your head, mister. Purport. The royal dress of the personality of Kali is artificial. The royal dress is suitable for a king or kshatriya, but when the lower class man artificially dresses himself as a king, his real identity is disclosed by the challenge of a bona fide kshatriya like Maharaj Parikshit. A real kshatriya never surrenders. He accepts the challenge of his rival kshatriya, and he fights either to die or to win. Surrender is unknown to a real kshatriya. In the age of Kali, there are so many pretenders dressed and posed like administrators or executive heads, but their real identity is disclosed when they are challenged by a real kshatriya. Therefore, when the artificially dressed personality of Kali saw that to fight Maharaj Parikshit was beyond his ability, he bowed down his head like a subordinate and gave up his royal dress. Text 30. Maharaj Parikshit, who was qualified to accept surrender and worthy of being sung in history, did not kill the poor surrendered and fallen Kali, but smiled compassionately, for he was kind to the poor. Purport. Even an ordinary kshatriya does not kill a surrendered person. And what to speak of Maharaj Parikshit, who was by nature compassionate and kind to the poor. He was smiling because the artificially dressed Kali had disclosed his identity as a lower class man. And he was thinking how ironic it was that although no one was saved from his sharp sword when he desired to kill, the poor lower class Kali was spared by his timely surrender. Maharaj Parikshit's glory and kindness are therefore sung in history. He was a kind and compassionate emperor, fully worthy of accepting surrender, even from his enemy. Thus the personality of Kali was saved by the will of providence. The king thus said, "We have inherited the fame of Arjuna. Therefore, since you have surrendered yourself with folded hands, you need not fear for your life, but you cannot remain in my kingdom, for you are the friend of irreligion." Purport: the personality of Kali, who is the friend of all kinds of irreligiosities, may be excused if he surrenders, but in all circumstances he cannot be allowed to live as a citizen in any part of a welfare state. The Pandavas were entrusted representatives of the personality of Godhead. Lord Krishna, who practically brought into being the battle of Kurukshetra, was not for any personal interest. He wanted an ideal king like Maharaj Yudhishthir and his descendants, like Maharaj Parikshit, to rule the world. And therefore a responsible king like Maharaj Parikshit could not allow the friend of irreligiosity to flourish in his kingdom at the cost of the good fame of the Pandavas. That is the way of wiping out corruption in the state, and not otherwise. The friends of irreligiosity should be banished from the state, and that will save the state from corruption. Well, there you have it. Text 32. If the personality of Kali, irreligion, is allowed to act as a man-god or an executive head, certainly irreligious principles like greed, falsehood, robbery, incivility, treachery, misfortune, cheating, quarrel, and vanity will abound. I'll read that again. If the personality of Kali, irreligion, is allowed to act as a man-god or an executive head, certainly irreligious principles like greed, falsehood, robbery, incivility, treachery, misfortune, cheating, quarrel, and vanity will abound. Purport: the principles of religion, namely austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness, as we have already discussed, may be followed by the follower of any faith. Shall I repeat that again? The principles of religion, namely austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness, as we have already discussed, may be followed by the follower of any faith. There is no need to turn from Hindu to Mohammedan to Christian or some other faith, and thus become a renegade and not follow the principles of religion. The Bhagavatam religion urges followers following the principles of religion. The principles of religion are not the dogmas or regulated principles of a certain faith. Such regulated principles may be different in terms of the time and place concerned. One has to see whether the aims of religion have been achieved. Sticking to the dogmas and formulas without attaining the real principles is not good. A secular state may be impartial to any particular type of faith, but the state cannot be indifferent to the principles of religion, as above mentioned. But in the age of Kali, the executive heads of state will be indifferent to such religious principles, and therefore, under their patronage, the opponents of religious principles, such as greed, falsehood, cheating, and pilfery, will naturally follow, and so there will be no meaning to propaganda crying to stop corruption in the state. Text 33. Prabhupada. Therefore, O friend of your religion, you do not deserve to remain in a place where experts perform sacrifices according to truth and religious principles for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. Yagyeshwara, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the beneficiary of all kinds of sacrificial ceremonies. Such sacrificial ceremonies are prescribed differently in the scriptures for different ages. In other words, sacrifice means to accept the supremacy of the Lord and thereby perform acts by which the Lord may be satisfied in all respects. The atheists do not believe in the existence of God, and they do not perform any sacrifice for the satisfaction of the Lord. Any place or country where the supremacy of the Lord is accepted and thus sacrifice is performed is called Brahmavarta. There are different countries in different parts of the world, and in each and every country, and each and every country may have different types of sacrifice to please the Supreme Lord. But the central point in pleasing Him is ascertained in the Bhagavatam, and that is truthfulness. The basic principle of religion is truthfulness, and the ultimate goal of all religions is to satisfy the Lord. In this age of Kali, the greatest common formula of sacrifice is the Sankirtana Yajna. That is the opinion of the experts who know how to propagate the process of yajna. Lord Chaitanya preached this method of yajna, and it is understood from this verse that the sacrificial method of Sankirtana Yajna may be performed anywhere and everywhere in order to drive away the personality of Kali and save human society from falling prey to the influence of the age. Isn't it wonderful how these purports do just that? They just drive away the misconceptions and the real reasons for the suffering. So we have to combine these two things, the chanting, in congregation chanting, and the congregational hearing of the Bhagavatam. And together, they get the job done. It's not just one or the other. Both have to be there. Text 34. In all sacrificial ceremonies, although sometimes a demigod is worshipped, the Supreme Lord Personality of Godhead is worshipped, because He is the Supersoul of everyone, and exists both inside and outside, like the air. Thus it is He only who awards all welfare to the worshipper. Purport. It is even sometimes seen that demigods like Indra and Chandra are worshipped and offered sacrificial awards, yet the rewards of all such sacrifices are rewarded to the worshipper by the Supreme Lord, and it is the Lord only who can offer all welfare to the worshipper. The demigods, although worshipped, cannot do anything without the sanction of the Lord, because the Lord is the Supersoul of everyone, both moving and non-moving. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord Himself confirms this in the following shlokas. Whatever a man may sacrifice to other gods, O son of Kunti, is really meant for me alone, but it is offered without true understanding. Ye pyanya devata bhakta yajante shadayan vitaha tepimam evakonteya yajanta vidipurvakam. Whatever man may sacrifice to other gods, O son of Kunti, is really meant for me alone, and it is offered without true understanding. It's Bhagavad Gita 9:23. The fact is that the Supreme Lord is one without a second. There is no God other than the Lord Himself. Thus, the Supreme Lord is eternally transcendental to the material creation. But there are many who worship the demigods like the sun, the moon, and Indra, who are only material representatives of the Supreme Lord. These demigods are indirect, qualitative representations of the Supreme Lord. A learned scholar or devotee, however, knows who is who. Therefore, he directly worships the Supreme Lord and is not diverted by the material, qualitative representations. Those who are not so learned worship such qualitative, material representations, but their worship is unceremonious because it is irregular. 35. Sri Sutta Goswami said, the personality of Kali, being thus ordered by Maharaj Parikshit, began to tremble in fear. Seeing the king before him like Yamaraj, ready to kill him, Kali spoke to the king as follows. Purport. The king was ready to kill the personality of Kali at once, as soon as he disobeyed his order. Otherwise, the king had no objection to allowing him to prolong his life. The personality of Kali also, after attempting to get rid of the punishment in various ways, decided that he must surrender unto him, and thus he began to tremble in fear of his life. The king or the executive head must be so strong as to stand before the personality of Kali, like the personality of death, Yamaraj. The king's order must be obeyed, otherwise the culprit's life is at risk. That is the way to rule the personalities of Kali, who create disturbance in the normal life of the state's citizens. Text 36. O your Majesty, though I may live anywhere and everywhere under your order, I shall but see you with bow and arrows wherever I look. Purport. The personality of Kali could see that Maharaj Parikshit was the emperor of all lands all over the world, and thus anywhere he might live, he would have to meet with the same mood of the king. The personality of Kali was meant for mischief, and Maharaj Parikshit was meant for subduing all kinds of mischief mongers, especially the personality of Kali. It was better, therefore, for the personality of Kali to have been killed by the king, then and there, instead of being killed elsewhere. He was, after all, a surrendered soul before the king, and it was for the king to do what was required. Text 37. Therefore, O chief amongst the protectors of religion, please fix some place for me where I can live permanently under the protection of your government. Purport. The personality of Kali addressed Maharaj Parikshit as the chief amongst the protectors of religiosity because the king refrained from killing a person who surrendered unto him. A surrendered soul should be given all protection, even though he may be an enemy. That is the principle of religion. And we can just imagine what sort of protection is given by the personality of Godhead to the person who surrenders unto him, not as an enemy, but as a devoted servitor. The Lord protects the surrendered soul from all sins and all resultant reactions of sinful acts. 38. Sutta Goswami said, Maharaj Parikshit, thus being petitioned by the personality of Kali, gave him permission to reside in places where gambling, drinking, prostitution, and animal slaughter were performed. Well, there you go. There's the answer right there. Purport. The basic principles of irreligiosity, such as pride, prostitution, intoxication, and falsehood, counteract the four principles of religion, namely austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness. The personality of Godhead was given permission to live in 4 places particularly mentioned by the king. Huh?
That's not the Kali.
The personality of Kali was given permission to live in 4 places particularly mentioned by the king, namely the place of gambling, the place of prostitution, the place of drinking, and the place of animal slaughter. Srila Jiva Goswami directs that drinking against the principles of scriptures, such as the Satramani Yagya, association with women outside marriage, the killing of animals against the injunctions of scriptures, are irreligious. In the Vedas, 2 types of injunctions are there. One type for the pravritas, or those who are engaged in material enjoyment, and another for the nivritas, or those who are liberated from material bondage. The Vedic injunction for the pravritas is to gradually regulate their activities towards the path of liberation. Therefore, for those who are in the lowest stage of ignorance and who indulge in wine, women, and flesh, drinking by performing sotramanya yagya, association of women by marriage, and flesh eating by sacrifices, are sometimes recommended. Such recommendations in the Vedic literature are meant for a particular class of men and not for all. But because they are injunctions of the Vedas for particular types of persons, such activities by the pravritas are not considered adharma. One man's food may be poison for others. Similarly, what is recommended for those in the mode of ignorance may be poison for those in the mode of goodness. Srila Jiva Goswami Prabhu therefore affirms that recommendations in the scriptures for a certain class of men are never to be considered adharma or irreligious, but such activities are factually adharma, and they are never to be encouraged. The recommendations in the scriptures are not meant for the encouragement of such adharma, but for regulating the necessary adharma gradually toward the path of adharma. Following in the footsteps of Maharaj Parikshit is the duty of all executive heads of state. Following in the footsteps of Maharaj Parikshit, it is the duty of all executive heads of states to see that the principles of religion, namely austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness, are established in the state, and that the principles of irreligion, namely pride, illicit female association or prostitution, intoxication, and falsity, are checked by all means. And to make the best use of a bad bargain, the personality of Kali may be transferred to places of gambling, drinking, prostitution, and slaughterhouses, if there are any places like that. Those who are addicted to these irreligious habits may be regulated by the injunctions of the scripture. In no circumstances should they be encouraged by any state. In other words, the state should categorically stop all kinds of gambling, drinking, prostitution, and falsity. The state which intends to eradicate corruption by majority may introduce the principles of religion in the following manner. 1. 2 compulsory fasting days a month, if not more, austerity. Even from the economic point of view, such 2 fasting days in a month in the state will save tons of food, and the system will also act very favorably on the general health of the citizens. 2. There must be compulsory marriage of young boys and girls attaining 24 years of age and 16 years of age, respectively. There is no harm in coeducation in the schools and colleges, provided the boys and girls are duly married, and in case there is any intimate connection between the male and female student, they should be married properly, without illicit relation. The Divorce Act is encouraging prostitution, and this should be abolished. 3. The citizens of the state must give in charity up to 50% of their income for the purpose of creating a spiritual atmosphere in the state or in human society, both individually and collectively. They should preach the principles of Bhagavatam by A, karma yoga, or doing everything for the satisfaction of the Lord. B, regular hearing of the Srimad-Bhagavatam from authorized persons or realized souls. C, chanting of the glories of the Lord congregationally, at home or at places of worship. D, rendering all kinds of service to the Bhagavatas, engaged in preaching Srimad Bhagavatam. And E, residing in a place where the atmosphere is saturated with God consciousness. If the state is regulated by the above process, naturally there will be God consciousness everywhere. Gambling of all description, even speculative business enterprise, is considered to be degrading. And when gambling is encouraged in the state, there is complete disappearance of truthfulness. Allowing young boys and girls to remain unmarried more than the above-mentioned ages and licensing animal slaughterhouses of all description should at once be prohibited. The flesh eaters may be allowed to take flesh as mentioned in the scriptures and not otherwise. Intoxication of all description, even smoking cigarettes, chewing tobacco, or drinking of tea must be prohibited. Hare Krishna. Prabhupada was pretty heavy, huh? No compromise. If we think that we're going to, just compromise here and there in order to attract people to us, then we will lose our ability to follow these principles. But if we follow these principles strictly ourselves, then the people who will be attracted will be able to follow, and gradually true religion and religious society can be built on that foundation. Okay, we're going to have a short session because I'm stopping at 7:45. We have 12 minutes exactly. Hannah, you raised your hand first.
Is the Maya Shakti always consistent, or does it get stronger throughout time?
The Maya Shakti is conducting the three modes of nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. So the Maya Shakti stays the same. But persons are more influenced by ignorance over time, and therefore the activities become more and more degraded. The same things are going on in the mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance, but they're done in a more degraded way. In the mode of goodness, you can still do these activities, but only in regulation according to the rules of the Vedas. Therefore, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says to Arjuna, Trigunya Vishya Veda, Nistrigunya Vivarjana. The Vedas are the regulators of the modes of nature, and therefore one must rise above the Vedas, above the modes of nature, if one wants to escape these entanglement of Maya Shakti altogether. So it may appear that Shakti is stronger because, like in the age of Kali, there's more of these degrading activities going on, and it is more degraded. And it is, in a sense, more powerful because the influence is more degraded. But in terms of an absolute statement of Maya Shakti being more powerful or less powerful, she stays the same all the time. It's we who are more attracted to the lower things than the higher things. And she just provides what we want. That was the actual ultimate end of that conclusion. Who's responsible? We're responsible. Each one of us is responsible.
I just had a reflection.
Reflect away.
The more God is in society, the more the material energy is counteracted. So I keep on seeing in the Bhagavatam how important it is. And it even said that if leaders change the way that they did things to make it less godless, then the whole civilization would change. So it just reiterates that we need better leaders, and that if those leaders are influencing the society to be full of God, then those lower modes start to dissipate.
Exactly. Precisely. And that's what the International Society of Krishna is. Krishna consciousness is. It started by Krishna and then perpetuated by Lord Chaitanya, who's Krishna, and then by the world acharyas spread all over the world. So we can't expect that the thing is going to change overnight. If we have false expectations, we'll always be disappointed. We have to have real expectations. But the real expectation means I can make that decision. I'm being given this knowledge, and I can choose to follow it or not. Therefore, you see people come and go out of our movement, even though it's so obvious. I mean, when you see now people are following these crooks, they're literally crooks. And there's a band of them. You know, it's not just one or another. It's not even a political system. It's what is being described in these purports. It's people who are actually have nefarious motives. They don't care about the people. They just care about their own families and their own dynasties and their own comforts, creature comforts, that's all. They could care less about the people. So therefore, Prabhupada's idea was to create a society which is an example for the rest of the world. And when other people come in who are sincere, like Carrie came in the other day, or yourself, or anyone who's actually, John, anyone who's honest and sincere and starts to hear the truth, they wake up. That's the truth. So if we keep ourselves telling the truth and acting in the truth, even if we have to keep doing our duty, I mean, you can still do your electricity and be a devotee like this. Amen. Okay, you got 2 minutes. Anybody else? Yes, Bhakti John.
This is not I was just getting an idea, like when King Prakshan was going to go after Kali.
Haribol, Doctor.
It's not a weak faith. You have to be strong, and I think you take a sword to your own life and cut out
Yes.
things that are not supposed to be there.
Yeah. Therefore, in the end of 2 chapters, Krishna says at the end, rise up, Arjuna, and fight.
You have to fight. It's not a weak faith.
Yes. Yes. It's not just faith, it's knowledge.
Knowledge, yeah.
Therefore, he says, destroy the darkness of ignorance, the bewilderment that has overcome you by the sword of knowledge.
Knowledge increases faith, I would think. The more knowledge you get.
Yes.
Faith.
Yes. Because the more you can act according to religious principles, and the more you can avoid those things that weaken our faith with knowledge. And devotional service is transcendental to all of that, because by performing devotional service to Krishna, by hearing and chanting and offering your food and spreading it to others, those activities automatically not just keep you pure, they keep you from becoming impure.
I like it that you don't weaken your message to try to attract people.
Yeah, well, there are some who do,
that.
and if you see that,
And it degrades the whole faith.
therefore, yeah, that's right, that's right. So learn this book, and if anybody inside or outside of this movement who starts to talk like that or do like that, just preach it from the Bhagavatam, and you'll be safe under all circumstances. And that's it. It is now. Well, actually, I'm sorry. It's Paul number. I still have. No. Yes, I still have 5 minutes.
Okay. Okay.
The millennial generation has taken over. Go ahead, honey.
Okay, so one of the 10 offenses in chanting is to instruct a faithless person in chanting the holy name. So I wrote down this question. If God has so many names, then why is the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra different from all of the other ones? So would you say that you have to learn the knowledge first?
Wait a second. First things first. God has unlimited names and they're all equally powerful. But just as Krishna is the original form of God, and any other form of God that he expands from him is equally powerful, but doesn't exhibit the full qualities of Krishna for particular purposes, for particular reasons of his own. So similarly, the name of Krishna, all of the names of God are contained within the name of Krishna. So it's not that all names of God aren't powerful, but at the same time, the name of Krishna is all powerful, and manifests the potencies of God most clearly. But there were very important points at the end where Prabhupada was saying the religious principles may vary from country to country, but they have to follow them. That's what's going on wrong. It's not that, like for instance, we had anyway, I don't want to mention her name, but there was someone who came here recently who was really a potential devotee, and he went to visit relatives, and he was very fired up about the philosophy, and then he got turned around, just flipped. He got flipped by his relatives, and therefore the same things he was accepting and enthusiastic about, he was condemning, because he was associated with people of that religion who weren't following their principles. We never say, and you can read in the purports, he never talks about, he doesn't blaspheme Jesus or another, religion. Never. The principles of religion, cleanliness and truthfulness and austerity and mercy, these are the principles of religion. As long as these are being followed in one's individual life and within the society of Krishna consciousness, then we'll be protected and we'll get strength more and more until we'll actually be capable of leading the human society. Prabhupada said we could take over the planet in 18 days if we were strong enough, if we were prepared. But that will take a long time. It's not that there's anything wrong because the movement isn't expanding faster. The other movements are expanding faster because they kept, like you said, John, they keep compromising. Now look what's happening to the Catholic Church. They're the biggest, and now they're just self-imploding. I have a story. I only have 1 minute. I can't tell the story. I only have 1 minute. But when I went to Spain in 1981, there was a festival called, it was in Portugal, Fatima, the Fatima Festival. And it was built around a revelation from the Mother Mary that this girl or two girls, they wrote 3 messages, and they were told to put them in envelopes with dates on them, and they were given to the Vatican, and then they were supposed to read these out in certain years. And the first one they read out, and it said, it predicted World War I. The second one predicted World War II. And the third one, the Vatican refused to read out. And this festival is where they built up the festival every year, and every so many years they would read out one of these messages. And then when they decided not to read the third one, it was like a revolt. And they were forced to read it. So the message in the third one was that there would be the Third World War, nuclear weapons would be used, and that the priests had fallen from grace, and that the persons who were actually following real religion would be protected. They'd be put in the right place at the right time to avoid the chaos. Very interesting. And now let's look at what's happened to all this revelation. That was in 1981, and I think it was supposed to be read out in, I don't remember them, I'm sorry, I can't remember the dates exactly, but it was somewhere between 1960 and 1980 that it was supposed to be read out. So that does it. We are 3 minutes late. Thanks everyone out in cyberspace for being with us tonight. These are very, very deep. I want us all to study these purports, read them on your own, and think deeply, and then you can ask questions and we can have discussions about these in the future readings. Thank you so much. Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai. Maharaj Parikshit ki jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol.